ecosystem. What do you mean by ecosystem? Ecosystem is a space where living and non-living entities interact with each other and they show an interrelationship. So it is basically the interaction and interrelationship between living organisms with themselves, non-living entities with themselves, and living and non-living organisms. Okay, ठीक है, clear? Now let's see. Ecosystem, we have to study two things: ecosystem structure and ecosystem function. Okay, ecosystem structure and function we have to study. Now structure is a very short topic. In structure there is one thing, that how a particular ecosystem looks like. That, let me give you an example. Anything can be an ecosystem. Like if you have a pond in the front of your house, then it's an ecosystem. Your house itself can be an ecosystem. This office can be an ecosystem. Okay, now how will you classify the structure of that ecosystem? This is your first part. So basically we are mainly concerned about forest ecosystem. Okay, forest ecosystem. Forest ecosystem, we know that in forest ecosystem we have small herbs, we have large shrubs, and we have large trees. So we can classify this whole forest into three parts: 1, 2, and 3. In the lower part we have herbs, in the upper part we have shrubs, and more upper part we have trees. है ना? So in different stratas we have different kind of entities, organisms living, and this is known as stratification, because we are dividing an ecosystem in different vertical strata. Okay, this is known as stratification. Okay, I will rush now because we are lagging in our syllabus. Okay, now let's talk about the function of a population. So let's talk about it separately. Function of a population, this is an important thing. If we talk about functions of population, there are 4 functions of population. In an ecosystem, we know that ecosystem survival or ecosystem existence of ecosystem is based on the presence of energy in it. If there is energy in something, then only it will be able to survive. So energy is fixed by plant in the form of plant biomass, and this is known as productivity. This is known as productivity. Second thing is that if something is produced, then it is ultimately going to get decomposed. This is the second thing. And we know that energy flows from one organism to other via food chain. Energy flow via food chain it happens. Okay, via food chain it happens. Okay. And fourth thing is nutrient cycling. Nutrient cycling. Fourth thing is nutrient cycling. Okay. Now, first let's begin with productivity. What is productivity? Productivity is the amount of biomass produced by plants per unit area per unit time. This is what productivity means. This is what productivity is. This is what productivity is. Okay, this is what productivity is. Now, who is going to produce the biomass for the first time? Plants. And now we know that plants are the only autotrophic organism living in this planet. So plants are going to produce all the biomass in this ecosystem. Okay, so plant basically they are photoautotrophs, है ना? They use the sunlight, they use the energy present in the sunlight, and they convert that energy to biomass, and this biomass is fixed in the ecosystem. Okay, now productivity is divided into 2 parts: gross primary productivity and net primary productivity, and net primary productivity, net primary productivity, gross primary productivity and net primary productivity. ठीक है, this is known as GPP and NPP, GPP and NPP. Okay, gross primary productivity and net primary productivity. Primary productivity is the productivity that we are talking about here. ठीक है, primarily which is produced. ठीक है, the first energy, the first biomass that is produced from the energy of the sunlight is known as primary productivity. Biomass क्या है? Biomass is the weight laid by plant. Okay, so the plant, when the plant grows, how will it grow? It will lay biomass and then it will grow. Okay, now gross primary productivity, let me give you one example to know more in a more easy manner. That let's say your father earns money, है ना, and he gets his salary, but we know that all the salary is not credited in the amount. Some of the energy or some of the salary, some of the rupee paisa, it gets cut down, है ना, some income tax cutting, है ना, some other insurance cuttings, that happens, है ना. So the whole total salary that is there is the gross salary, and the salary that he gets after all the cuttings is known as net salary, that is credited in his account. Okay, and that is the thing with gross primary productivity and net primary productivity. Okay, gross primary productivity is actually the total energy produced by a plant, total energy or total biomass produced by a plant by photosynthesis. Okay, but net primary productivity is the actual biomass that is seen, actual biomass seen. ठीक है, because from the total biomass, some of the biomass gets used up, some of the biomass gets used up during the course of other activities of plant, like plants also respire, है ना, so some of the biomass is getting used up in the respiration process, है ना, some of it is getting used up in other metabolic processes of plants. So that's why there is some amount which is lost from this total amount, and the remaining amount is known as net primary productivity. So gross primary productivity is basically equal to net primary productivity plus the respiratory losses, the respiratory losses. Okay, the respiratory losses. Okay, this is the thing. Okay, clear, clear, clear. Now this is the thing, and it is the net primary productivity that is available to the other animals, herbivores, to eat. Okay, we know that plants get eaten by herbivores. So herbivores don't eat the GPP, gross primary productivity. They eat the biomass of the plant, which is there actually present in the plant, which is net primary productivity. Okay, it is the biomass available to herbivores. Okay, now let's see. So this is primary productivity, है ना? We talked about primary productivity. Now when herbivores eat the plant, we know that herbivores also grow after eating and using that plant biomass in its body, and that growth is known as secondary productivity, is known as secondary productivity. So secondary productivity is basically concerned with the biomass laid by herbivores after eating the plant biomass. ठीक है, and primary productivity is concerned with the plant biomass. Okay, clear, clear. Now let's move ahead. Let's move ahead and see other things. So this is productivity. Now there are two terms. One is known as standing crop and one is known as standing state. Now tell me, what is the difference between them? Standing crop is basically the total organic material present in an ecosystem. Total organic material present in an ecosystem is known as standing crop, and total inorganic material present in an ecosystem is known as standing state. So total organic is standing crop, total inorganic is standing state. Okay, these are the two things here. Now let's move ahead. So we have seen productivity. Now let's see the next function of ecosystem, which is decomposition. Let's start. Second thing is decomposition. Now we know that what is decomposition. Decomposition is basically the degradation of the dead and decaying matter present in the environment, है ना? So it is basically decomposition. Okay, and decomposition is done by organisms known as detritivores. So decomposition is done by organisms known as detritivores. ठीक है? Known as detritivores. Okay. Now what are detritivores? Detritivores can be anything. Bacteria can be detritivores if it is able to degrade. Fungi can be detritivore. Earthworms, when it decomposes organisms or something in the soil, they also act as detritivores. Okay. And vultures, because they feed on dead and decaying matter, they are also detritivores. Okay, they are also detritivores. Okay, now let's begin. So the process of decomposition is a 5-step process, and the first step is fragmentation. What do you mean by fragmentation? Fragmentation is basically the process of breakdown of the dead and decaying matter into larger fragments. Okay, the fragments get degraded or fragmented into larger fragments in the first process. Okay, during the course of fragmentation, there are some materials which are removed, which are produced, and those are inorganic minerals. And these minerals are water soluble. These water soluble minerals, they actually, along with water, they go down in the soil and they increases the mineral content of the soil. And this process of absorption of the mineral content by the soil is known as what? Is known as leaching. Okay. Third process is known as catabolism. What do you mean by catabolism? Catabolism is a process of further degradation or further breakdown of the decomposing material. ठीक है? Further degradation of the decomposing material. Okay. Now the next step, fourth step. After catabolism, we know that very small fine particles are produced from that decompose or litter. And now there is one process known as mineralization. Okay, so by the process of catabolism, there are many inorganic substances which comes out, है ना? And those mineral ions get absorbed by the soil. It is just like a leaching process, but in leaching, the mineral ions, it goes deep down into the soil and it becomes unavailable to the plants for their bodily function. So plant roots can't absorb the leached minerals because it goes very deep into the soil. But mineralization, during the course of mineralization, the minerals that are produced, they are present in the soil and they can be absorbed by the plant for their body functions. Okay. Now, so mineralization may we produce inorganic substances because minerals are inorganic in nature. But what about organic substances? There are organic substances which are also remaining in the soil, and that organic substance forms humus, and this process is known as humification. It is basically the process of production of humus, And what do you mean by humus? Humus is actually an organic layer, organic, dark, amorphous, brown layer which is not soluble in water, which is non-polar, है ना? And that's why, because it is non-polar, that's why, 1 minute, one minute. Because this humus is non-soluble in water, that's why it is not absorbed inside the soil, because it is non-polar and water cannot absorb it. So that's why it keeps on piling up on the surface of soil and it forms a humus. Okay, that's what humus is. If you are not able to catch up, then please see this lecture again, because if I will start to teach slowly, then ultimately your syllabus will not get completed on the given timeline, है ना? So that's why I am teaching this fast, because if I give you an estimate here, there are total around 25 chapters still remaining to be covered. Okay, we have covered 11-12 chapters till now, and there are total 25 to 26 chapters which are still remaining, and we have approximately 1 month remaining, not 1 month also, but approximately 1 month, and every week we get only 4 classes. So 4 for 16, we are going to get only 16 classes to cover 25 chapters. Now you can get an estimate, you can get an idea of why actually I am teaching this fast, because we have less days and more chapters. Okay, that's why. So all in all, the idea is that we have 16 lectures to cover 25 chapters. Okay, let's see the other thing. So now we have seen the process of decomposition. It has 5 steps: fragmentation, leaching, catabolism, mineralization, and humification. Okay, now let's move ahead and see rate of decomposition. Rate of decomposition. Rate of decomposition. Rate. We know that decomposition can be a fast process and it can be a slow process also. There are things which can affect the rate of decomposition, which is that if there are complex substances like complex lipids present in the litter or the substance to be degraded, then that complex lipid is ultimately going to slow down the process of decomposition. ठीक है? Like lignin, tannin, suberin. If these chemicals, these types of chemicals are present in your litter, then ultimately the process of decomposition is going to get slowed down, and they are mainly present in plants, plant trunks. Okay, so if temperature is less, then decomposition is also less. Okay, so we can say that temperature is directly proportional to decomposition. You will increase the temperature, rate of decomposition will also increase. Humidity is directly proportional to decomposition. The more will be humidity, the more will be the rate of decomposition. Okay, clear? These are the things. Now let's move ahead, and we have seen the 2 functions of our ecosystem: productivity and decomposition. Now let's move on to the next one: energy flow. Energy flow, we know that in ecosystem, energy flow happens when someone eats other ones, है ना? And when someone eats or predates on the other organism, then we can say that there is a food chain that is going on. So food chain is basically a process of eating someone and getting eaten by someone. Okay, this is energy flow and food chain. Okay, this is food chain. So food chain, a typical food chain, it looks like this, that there are producers. There are producers who produces the food, and there are consumers, or we can say primary consumers, who consumes plant, and there are secondary consumers. There are secondary consumers who consumes herbivores, and there are tertiary consumers. There are tertiary consumers who consumes secondary consumers. Okay. So producers, let's say producers are autotrophs. Okay. Primary consumers, they are herbivores. Secondary consumer, they are carnivores. Top consumers, tertiary consumers are top carnivores. Okay, these are the things. Okay, clear? So this is how a typical food chain looks like. Okay, and each level, like all the producers, they form a level of producers. All the herbivores comes under this level known as primary consumer. All the secondary consumers or carnivores, primary carnivores, they come under this. All the top carnivores come under this. So each level of, hey, 1 minute, each level of organisms forms a trophic level. So each level is known as trophic level. Okay, each level of consumer forms a trophic level. Okay, clear? This thing should be clear to all of you. Now, but food chain, it looks like this, but there are two types of food chain. First food chain is known as grazing food chain. Grazing food chain, known as GFC. Take, and the second one is known as detritus food chain. Detritus food chain, DFC. Okay, DFC. Now, what are the basic differences between them? There is one very basic difference between them, which is the starting point. So in grazing food chain, the first trophic level is comprised of producers or plants. Plants or producers. Okay, plants or producers. And in the detritus food chain, the first trophic level is comprised of detritus. It's comprised of detritus or litter, we can say, the dead and decaying matter. Okay, so this is a thing. So it differs in the first trophic level. Okay, now we know that in our, if we divide our whole world into two parts, then it will get divided into two parts. First one is the terrestrial habitat, and second one is the oceanic habitat. So there are two basic ecosystem, oceanic ecosystem and a terrestrial ecosystem. Yes. So terrestrial ecosystem, the major flow of energy in terrestrial ecosystem occurs by detritus food chain. Okay. Terrestrial food chain, or terrestrial ecosystem, the major flow of energy occurs via detritus food chain. But in oceans, the major energy flow occurs by grazing food chain. Okay. Clear? This thing you should remember. Okay, this thing should be clear to all of you. Now, oceans, they cover around 70% of our ecosystem, of our earth. Hai na? While terrestrial ecosystem, it only comprises of around 28 to 30% of the whole earth, but still the total biomass which is produced per year, which is 170 billion ton, है ना? Out of this 170 billion ton, oceans only are able to produce 65 billion ton, while terrestrial ecosystem they produce around 105 billion ton, which means that though terrestrial ecosystem is present in a very less amount, but still they are able to produce very large quantity. ठीक है? But in oceans cover up to 70% of our earth, but still they are producing very less. ठीक है? समझ गए? Clear? Tiger lion किधर होंगे? Tiger lion are carnivore या tiger lion will come here, है ना? Or else they can come here in the tertiary consumers. Okay, yes, plants are present in the terrestrial ecosystem, but yes, there are algae which are present in oceanic ecosystems also. So it doesn't mean that oceans they contain only water. Ocean contains algae also, which are able to produce many things. Okay, yes. Now let's move ahead. So there is one rule, very important rule, from which questions are asked every year in the next exam. Not every year, but very frequently, and this is known as 10% rule. 10% rule. We know that, let's say we have plants or we have first trophic level producers, then we have herbivores, then we have carnivores, and then we have top carnivores. Then we have top carnivores. Okay, so let's say the amount of energy which is present in the first trophic level, it is around 10,000 joule, let's say, है ना? So 10,000 joule is present in producer. In the next trophic level, you can get an idea that it is going to have 1000 joule. In the next trophic level, we will get only 100 joule, and in the next trophic level, we will get only 10 joule. Okay, we'll get only 10 joule. What can you derive from this data? You can say that only 10% of the initial trophic level is going to the second trophic level, 10% of the second trophic level is going in the third trophic level, and 10% of the third trophic level is going in the fourth trophic level. Okay, so it means that the amount of biomass or the amount of energy which goes from one trophic level to the other trophic level, it is only the 10%. 10% of energy goes from upper to lower trophic level. Okay, from the upper to lower trophic level. Clear? This thing should be clear to you. Now let's move ahead. One thing that I wanted to tell you here is that in the grazing food chain, plants, we know that it produces biomass, है ना? Plants produces biomass, but the whole biomass that the plant produces, they produce by sunlight, है ना? They produce it by using sunlight. They produce it by using sunlight. Okay, now sunlight, it comes from sun, है ना? Sun gives sunlight to plant, but not all sunlight is photosynthetically active. Only less than 15%, less than 50% of the sunlight is photosynthetically active radiation. ठीक है? Less than 50% of sunlight is photosynthetically active radiation. Is photosynthetically active radiation. Less than 50% of the sunlight that is coming on the earth is photosynthetically active, and out of this 50% also, only 2 to 10% of this photosynthetically active radiation is taken by plant to produce the biomass. Okay, clear? Yes, 90% is used at every trophic level and 10% is given to the next trophic level. Okay, clear? So this thing that I wanted to tell you, what was the thing? That not all sunlight is used by plant for photosynthesis. Only very small amount is used, 2 to 10% of the photosynthetically active radiation, which is 50% of the incident sunlight. Clear? Clear? 2 to 10% of 100 nahi, 2 to 10% of 50%. Incident radiation is 100%. So 100% light, if let's say plant have 100 sunlight, sun has 100% sunlight, then 50% goes here. And out of this 50%, 2 to 10% of this 50% goes in the plant for photosynthetic function. Okay, clear? If you will calculate with respect to this, then 1 to 5% will come. Chalo, next. Now, this chapter, its last topic of this chapter is ecological pyramids. Ecological pyramids. So if we want to get an idea of the number of individuals or the amount of energy present in individuals or the amount of weight present in the individuals of particular trophic level, है ना? We can get this idea from the ecological pyramid. So ecological pyramid, they basically gives us idea of how many numbers, how many kgs or how much energy is present at particular trophic level. Okay, let's see them. So ecological pyramids, they are plotted in three manners, or in three manners. Pyramids of numbers, pyramids of biomass, and pyramids of energy, and pyramids of energy. Okay, now pyramid of number, pyramid of biomass, and pyramid of energy. Now pyramid of number, let's see them one by one. Let's say pyramid of number. Okay, if we try to get an idea of pyramid of number, let's say we have a grazing ecosystem. Okay, grazing ecosystem means there is a field in which lots of grass is there, है ना? And on that grass 100 goats are grazing, and on 100 goats 2 lions are predating on those goats. Okay, now if we talk about numbers, then we know that whole field of grass will contain lakhs of grass, है ना? 1 lakh grass. Let's say this is a one trophic level of grass, 1 lakh. Let's say some number. And 100 goats are there, which is very less than lakhs. And 2 lions are feeding on them. So if we compare numbers, then grasses are more, goats are less, and lions are all very less. So this grazing ecosystem, if we plot the pyramid of number, it will look like this. Clear? But this pyramid of number, it is not always upright for all the ecosystem. It gets inverted also sometimes. Like if we compare a tree ecosystem, then how will a tree look like? We know that if there is one tree, and on that tree 100 birds are present. So 100 is more than one. And on those 100 birds, 2 cats are feeding. Then it will start to look like this. So pyramid of number can be upward straight and can be inverted also. Okay, clear? So that's why we try to plot graph these pyramids in some other way, and that's the second one. Check. So we plot a pyramid of biomass here. Pyramid of biomass. It actually tells us or gives us information about the amount of weight present in particular trophic level. है ना? Amount of biomass means in kgs. है ना? How many kgs of substance is present at particular trophic level. Let's say we have a tree ecosystem. One tree, 100 birds and 2 cats. One tree, if we are comparing that one tree in terms of kgs, then that one tree will contain around 1000 kg biomass, है ना? 1000 kg of tree. Now 100 birds, they will weight around, let's say 20 kg, and let's say we have one snake there which is feeding on this bird, then this snake will weight around 10 kg. So tree ecosystem of, in terms of biomass it is straight, but in terms of numbers it is ulta, है ना? It is inverted. But this biomass pyramid, it is mostly upright, but sometimes it is inverted, like the pond ecosystem. We know that in pond there are phytoplanktons and there are zooplanktons. There are phytoplanktons, there are phytoplanktons, and there are zooplanktons. There are zooplanktons. Okay, so very small number or very small biomass of phytoplanktons, they feed a large biomass of zooplanktons. Okay, so this is one exception of pyramids of biomass which is not always upright. This is an important example here. Okay, so number, pyramid of number and biomass, both of them can be straight, both of them can be inverted also, but there is one pyramid which is always upright, and that pyramid is known as pyramid of energy. That pyramid is known as pyramid of energy. Pyramid of energy is always upright and it always looks like this. Why? Because we have seen the 10% law, and according to 10% law, producers contain maximum amount of energy and only 10% of the energy present in the producer is transferred to the next trophic level, and 10% of this one is transferred to the next trophic level. So energy is always going to reduce by 10%. That's why it is always going to be upright. Clear? Always upright. This is always upright. Always, this is always upright. Always upright. Clear? So this is your chapter. This is your chapter known as ecosystem.